One stamp set, two stunning cards, and endless possibilities. Well, when I first received this Arabesque medallion set by Altenew, I had no idea what I was going to create with it. But once I started, I couldn't stop. I have lost count of how many cards I have made using this particular set. Now, today I'm sharing two completely different card designs using the same large stamped image. We have some die cutting, embossing, along with ideas to help you get more out of the supplies. Hi, I'm Revati and welcome to my crafty space. Let's jump right in. The star of today's project is this beautiful Arabesque Medallion Bundle by Altenew. Now, this I think was part of the May release. This bundle includes a large, beautifully detailed medallion stamp, along with coordinating layering stencils and a matching die, making it incredibly easy to create intricate designs with very little effort. What I love the most about this set is how versatile it is. You can use the entire medallion as a bold focal point, color in so many different ways with those layering stencils, or even cut it apart to create completely new designs. It's one of those products that really stretches your creativity, and every time I use it, I come up with a totally different idea. Now, this set has some absolutely gorgeous sentiments. We have four bold sentiments, which you also get coordinating dies for, along with the big medallion die, and also those little sub sentiments, which I think would be perfect for your card projects. For today's video, I'll be sharing two different cards that both start with this same stamped image, so you can see just how much variety you can get from this single bundle. You will see that the packaging includes few inspirations, so if you're not quite sure where to start, those samples are a great jumping off point and can really get your creativity flowing. The bundle includes this gorgeous detailed medallion stamp coordinating layering stencils and a matching die. So if coloring is more your style, you can absolutely bring this image to life with your alcohol markers, watercolors, colored pencils, or any other coloring medium, if not the layering stencils. The intricate design is beautiful on its own, and it lends itself so many different techniques. Now, that's what I love the most about this bundle, is that it gives you so much creative freedom, and depending on how you choose to color or use the image, you can achieve a completely different look every single time. I'll start by stamping the beautiful medallion image onto a piece of white cardstock. Now, this one fits perfectly within my stamp wheel. This time I stamped this image using embossing ink and heat embossed it with gold embossing powder, which gives the design such a gorgeous and elegant shine. Now, if you've watched my videos, you know how much I love adding embossing to my stamped images, but I usually reach out for black embossing or black ink when I'm stamping detailed images like this one. But today I decided to switch things up and go with gold instead. I love how instantly it adds a touch of elegance and really makes the intricate details of the medallion stand out. Now here I'm using the Altenew's gold embossing powder. Next, I make sure the embossing powder completely covers every bit of the stamped image. Since this design has so many beautiful intricate details, I like to take a quick look before heat embossing to make sure I haven't missed any areas. Once I'm happy with the coverage, I gently tap off the excess and funnel the remaining embossing powder right back into the container so it can be used again later. Now, once that's done, it's time for my absolute favorite part, that is watching the magic happen. It's time to heat set this beautiful embossing powder. But before I bring my heat tool to the paper, I always let it heat up for a few seconds because this is such a large image, and starting with a hot heat tool makes the embossing process so much more quicker and more even. As I heat the image, I keep the tool moving across the entire design instead of holding it over on one spot for too long. This helps the embossing powder melt smoothly without becoming overheated, and it also reduces the amount of heat concentrated in one area, which helps minimize warping of the paper. Now, taking these few extra seconds really makes a difference, especially when you're working with larger images like this one. If you do notice that your cardstock has warped a bit after all that heat embossing, don't worry, it's a very easy fix. Simply place your panel under a stack of heavy books or anything with a little weight to it and let it sit for about 15 to 20 minutes. As the paper cools and rests under the weight, it will flatten out nicely, leaving you with a much smoother panel that's ready for the next step of your project. As much as I love coloring my stamped images with alcohol markers, I have to admit that having coordinating layering stencils is such a blessing. They make the coloring process so quick and effortless while still giving you a beautiful detailed result. For this image, we will be working with the three layered stencils, and for today's card, I decided to challenge myself with a color palette that I have never tried before. Now, instead of reaching for multiple ink families, I'm going to use just one ink set. This is the Mediterranean Glow Fresh Dye ink set by Altenew. Now, if you've been watching my videos for a while, you've probably seen me use these gorgeous green shades in several projects, but I usually pair them with bright florals or vibrant accent colors. But this time, I'm letting the greens take the center stage. By using these different shades from the same ink family, we will create a rich monochromatic look with plenty of depth and dimension. I absolutely love stepping outside my comfort zone with color combinations like this one, and I think the finished result turned out so elegant. Each of the stencils is numbered, so I started with stencil number 1 and went in with the lightest shade of green from the set, which is called Honeydew Glow. Now, it is such a beautiful soft green, almost leaning towards a warm yellow undertone, and I felt that this was perfect for the very first base layer of our design. Now, before I started the blending, I did mask off the edges of my cardstock and the stencil using some post-it notes. Now, this helps protect the rest of the panel or the background so that I don't accidentally get any ink where I don't want it. I also secure the stencil in place using my magnets so everything stays nice and steady while I'm working on it. Now for all the ink blending today, I'm using the small ink blending brushes by Altenew. I love these for the more detailed stencil work like this because they give you that really good control, especially when you're working with tighter areas of a design like this medallion. I made sure to create a beautiful gradient effect with the first stencil layer, starting light and then adding a bit more pressure towards the center of the image using the same honey glow ink. This helps build soft dimension without overwhelming the design. Once I finished with stencil number 1, I moved on to stencil number 2. For this one, I began with Honeydew Glow again as my base layer and that keeps everything consistent. And then after that, I brought in my second shade, which was Antique Olive, which is this deeper, richer green. Now, I absolutely love how both of these shades transition into each other. It creates such a smooth blend from soft to bold. And honestly, I feel like these greens pair beautifully with the gold embossed background. The combination just feels so elegant, balanced, and really timeless. For stencil number 3, I bought in darker shades from the color palette, which are Olaf and Sugar Kelp. Now, what I really love about working within the same color family is how seamless the transition becomes. Even as you move from the lighter honeydew glow to the deeper greens, everything still feels connected and cohesive. There is no harsh shift, just a natural flow of color that builds beautiful depth and dimension across the entire medallion design. At this point, you could honestly stop here and just frame this entire piece as is. It would look absolutely stunning on its own. But I really wanted to share two different card ideas with you guys, so I went ahead and trimmed my panel right down the center of the design. I used my paper trimmer to get a clean, straight cut, making sure I was splitting the medallion evenly. It always feels a little bold to cut into a finished background like this one, but I love how it instantly gives you two separate focal point images to work with and opens up even more creative possibilities. For card number 1, I decided to keep the design really simple and let the medallion do most of the work. I trimmed my panel down to 4 by 5 and quarter inches, which is slightly smaller than your standard A2 size card base, making sure I captured as much of that beautiful design as possible. I also left a bit of that clean white space along one of the edge, which is where we'll be adding our sentiment later. I find that being intentional with where you trim your panel really makes a difference. It helps balance the design and ensures everything feels evenly spaced and well composed on your card front. Now, even small adjustments like this can completely change how your finished card looks. So, I always like to take a moment here and plan that placement carefully before adhering anything down. So, that's the card front for card number one. Now, for our second card, I decided to take things in a slightly different direction and die cut that beautiful medallion. Now, even though it's just half of that design at this point, this is one of those images that's really easy to line up with the coordinating dies. Now, to make sure everything stayed in place, I secured the die with some washi tape so it wouldn't shift while running it through my die cutting machine. Once everything was aligned, I simply ran it through and it cut out that intricate medallion piece beautifully, ready to become the focal point for our card number two. To add a little extra interest and dimension, I decided to take the die cut piece and run it through a coordinating embossing folder that's again part of that bundle. Now, what I love about this step is that it's really easy to line up the design with the folder, so everything stays perfectly aligned. I then ran the sandwich through my die cutting machine, and it picked up the most beautiful embossed detail on top of that already stamped and ink blended piece. It just adds that extra layer of texture and really makes the medallion feel even more dimensional and elegant. So there we have it. Card number one featuring that beautiful stamped and ink blended panel as the main focal point of our design. Clean, simple, and really letting that medallion shine on its own. And then we also have our second piece, which is the die cut medallion with all that added embossed detail, still showcasing that gorgeous ink blending, but with so much more texture and dimension. And just like that, we've created two completely different looks from a single stamped image. This is exactly why I said right in the beginning that this is such a versatile bundle. It truly gives you endless creative possibilities depending on how you choose to use it. Now, while card number one was pretty much ready, I was still deciding what color base I wanted to use for our die cut piece. I was honestly torn between going for a simple white card panel, which would keep things light and clean and really let the design stand out, or switching things up completely and going with a black card base for that bold contrast. Both options were tempting for very different reasons, so I took a moment to look at the piece and see which direction would really make those greens and gold details pop the most. I did end up going with a white card panel as the main backdrop for my second card and added the black cardstock layer beneath the die cut piece as a soft shadow effect. Now, I really love how that bit of contrast helps the die cut medallion stand out even more while still keeping the overall design look clean and elegant. Well, I have to quickly apologize here. I think I may have missed hitting the record button on my phone, so I didn't capture all of that finishing steps for card number two. But you will still see me heat embossing the sentiment in gold. I stamped two sets of the sentiment for these cards. We have the larger celebrate sentiment, which I'll be die cutting later using the coordinating die, and we have the smaller sub sentiment that reads, "Wishing you a day filled with joy you deserve." Now, even though I missed a bit of the process, I think these finishing touches really bring the whole design together. I will just walk you through in detail about how I came about with the designs and the part of the video that I missed to record. Now, if you notice here, I added a bit of ink blending on both of the white panels. I used the same green shades from the set that we used on our stamped image and gently brought the color in around the edges to create that soft shaded frame. I just wanted to tone down all of that stark white on our panel. Now, it's a really simple step, but it helps tie everything together and makes the panel feel more cohesive with the main design. I also went in with some black and gold splatters on both of those panels to add a bit of extra interest. I love doing this finishing touch because it not only adds depth and movement to the entire design, but it also echoes the black and gold elements from our sentiments and the stamped and die cut medallion. It just brings everything together in such a beautiful coordinated way. Before adhering my sentiments in place, I first glued my die cut medallion onto the darker ink blended portion of the panel. You could absolutely use foam tape here if you want for that even more depth and dimension, but I decided to go with liquid glue since I knew I would be building up the sentiment layers with foam tape instead. This way, I could balance out the dimension across the card without making everything look too bulky in just one area. Then, using foam tape, I popped up the large Celebrate sentiment on both our cards. This is one of my favorite ways to add emphasis on the sentiment because it instantly draws the eye and creates that beautiful dimensional focal point. I took a little extra time here to make sure everything was perfectly aligned on my panel using my T square ruler so that the placement stayed clean, straight, and evenly placed. One small trick I like to use when working with foam tape is adding just a tiny bit of liquid glue to the back. It gives me a bit of a wiggle room, which makes it so much more easier to adjust the sentiment placement before the adhesive fully sets. It's a simple step, but it really helps avoid any misalignment, especially when you're working with bold focal sentiments like this one. Now, finally, I went back in with the liquid glue to add the smaller sub-sentiment strips right underneath the main sentiment on each card. This helps ground the entire sentiment cluster and keeps everything feel intentional and well balanced. I always feel like these smaller sentiments are what really complete the story of a card, tying everything together while still keeping the focus on the main word. You could definitely go ahead and stamp these smaller sentiments on the insides of your card, but most of the times I usually keep the insides of my cards blank where I can write in my personal message. But this is another way to use up all those little sub sentiments that you have on your stamp set. Once that was done, I added some foam tape on both these panels and mounted them onto top folding A2 size card bases. And with that, both our cards are complete. What I love the most about this project is how one single stamped image gave us two completely different looks. One clean and simple, and the other one full of texture, dimension, and layered detail. It really shows how much versatility you can get from this beautiful Arabesque Medallion Bundle, especially when you start mixing, stamping, heat embossing, stenciling, and die cutting everything in just one beautiful project. I hope this inspires you to look at your supplies a little differently and explore new ways to stretch your stamps beyond just one use. Sometimes all it takes is a little experimentation to discover endless possibilities. Now, if you enjoyed this tutorial, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more card making inspirations. I'll be sure to list down the supplies that I use to create these cards in the description box below. Please note that all of those links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe.